So in 2016, in November 8th, actually, so just had the anniversary. I had an ectopic pregnancy that ruptured and caused me to have internal bleeding that I was aware of, but I didn't know how serious it was. And about maybe an hour before I went to the hospital, I had joked about how I was bleeding to death. And then I woke up in the hospital, and I guess I had fainted. They took me and they found out that I had lost, at this point, I lost half of the blood supply to my body. So I was dying, and I knew I was dying. I had this overwhelming feeling of panic that set in. It was pretty intense. And I knew something was very, very wrong. And it was physically unpleasant. And later, like a year later, I realized what it was when I was in front of my classroom teaching science. But at the time I didn't know. And it was just like this, I felt like I was going to explode, this tension building up inside me. And as soon as it got to the point where I couldn't take it almost to the point where I couldn't take it, I was out of my body. And I was in, like, when you release a balloon inside a house and it hits the ceiling, and it bounces, like that's what I was doing. I was bouncing on the ceiling of like the hospital room, and I'm looking down and I see myself, and the doctors like crash, I'm crashing and they're trying to resuscitate me. And I had this one thought, and it was like, shit, that sucks. That was it. That was like my big epiphany was like, oh, well, that sucks.
Mm.
And then I realized, oh, my personality is still intact, right? Because my sarcasm made it to where I am now. And I'm watching this happen, and I had zero attachment to it. It was just facts. I was just watching a show play, the scene play out. And um, I heard the flatline, and, I watched them it's hard to explain time properly because it doesn't exist the way it does here. But let's say that I'm above, right, my body, and if I look to my right, I'm in the hospital room. But if I look to my left, I was somewhere else completely. I was in this bright white space, like a room, I guess, but I really couldn't see walls. It was just lit, like very warm white light. And I was alone. I didn't see anyone. I didn't feel alone, but I didn't see anybody. Um, and my attention kept going back and forth from the hospital room to the other, where I was in this other place, dimension. I don't know exactly what, but then I was like, oh God, my kids. Right. So that brought my attention back to the hospital room. And I'm like, Ashley, my oldest at the time, she was 21, and she was up north, like 200 miles away. And before I was even done thinking about her, I was in her classroom watching her take an exam in college. Like, I noted the time on the wall, what she was wearing, everything. And I was like, okay, she'll be fine. And then I'm like, Lucy, my little one, who was just under 2 at the time. I just had her, a year and a half earlier. And she was in the waiting room playing with Legos, and I was there. Like, I was transported at the speed of thought to wherever I, thought of. Um, and then my attention was brought back to the hospital room where they called time of death, and they were talking about it. And one of the doctors had made a comment about how, well, what did you expect? She was just a former drug addict or something like to that effect, because in my medical records, it had stated that I had dealt with an addiction to opiates like Oxycontin, and had been sober at that point for 8 years. But like that was still in my record. So he still used that. He made that comment, and I didn't have a reaction to it at that time. It was just a fact that happened. Um, but then I was now not present for here anymore. Now I'm in the left, right? Like I'm the looking left, and I'm in this other place, and there's no one there. But then suddenly there is someone there, and it's me. So me looking at me, but it's a version of me that's different. It looks like me, but not really. Like there's things are off about it. Like I realize I'm looking at myself, but I knew why I was there all of a sudden. It was like, okay. And the one word that was spoken to me was nope. Just nope. And I knew I'm going back. But that one word, nope, was encoded with 1,000 different messages inside of it that would like, like reveal themselves over the next years, like, and still happening now. Like, so that one word, like, was like a zip file, I guess you could say, that was filled with other messages that I would get later, and make sense of, or try to make sense of. So I knew nope meant you're going back. And so I got sent back into my body. But before I say that, like, I would just say, when we're out of body, you're huge, like you're everywhere. Like, it's this humongous amount of space you're taking up without taking up space. And I could feel that I had a density to me, but I also was intermingling with other energies that I couldn't see, but I could feel. It's really hard to explain. But I realized I didn't have a head or eyes. So I don't know how I could see, but I could see in 360 degrees, like, because there was no head, bone, like skull to like impede your vision, like at all. So I could just see everything. If I thought about what's behind me, I could see everything. Like, it just anything at the thought of at, at the speed of thought, it was there available. It's weird. Um, so I get shoved back. I remember thinking, like, how am I gonna fit in that tiny body? Right. Going back in. And yeah, it hurt like hell going back in. So I get shoved through my navel, through my belly button. That's how I re-entered through my body, which was odd because I've never heard anything about like the belly button being like a place for a spirit to enter. Like, that's not something I'd ever heard of. So it was odd. And that's when I saw the tunnel. So like, I saw a tunnel on the way back in, and that was because I was being shoved through my belly button, and it hurt, physically painful as hell. And that's what actually brought me back to life. The pain from that is what shot me up onto the table and like gasping for air. So I scared the crap out of everyone in that room. They were not even paying attention to my body anymore. Like, and also I was still hooked up to the monitors, but there was no previous beeping that happened to alert them that I was coming back. Right. So I just shot up, and immediately I knew what had happened. I knew I had died. I didn't know how long it had been, but I started asking him, did you say this? Did you, and I'm like, did you say something about me being a former drug addict? And the doctor was like, how do you know that? And I'm like, please tell me I'm wrong. Like, please tell me I didn't hear that. You know what I mean? Like, because I understood that if it was true, that would mean that, yeah, I died and like was still able to see everything and what was going on. And he just was like, I'm sorry. He just apologizing. I'm like, did you say it or not? He's like, yeah. And then there were one guy over here, I think his name was Anthony, maybe. He had dropped his clipboard because he was startled by my awakening, like back up. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. And I apologized to him. He's like, I he's like, you're okay. Like, you were dead. I'm like, right. I was dead. How long? And then that's when they told me how long I've been dead for. Um, so I was kind of upset because um, I didn't want it to be true. Like, I didn't want those things validated for me because it was scary. Because I realized, like, I just died. Like, I have kids. I have, I mean, this is not something that ever, of course we all die, but it hadn't crossed my mind that um I would be in the situation to leave them orphaned, right? Like, that would be horrible. So and I was really upset with myself that I didn't think more about my kids. Like, I saw them and like checked in on them, I guess you could say, but I wasn't like sad about it. I wasn't like, who's going to take care of them? Like, those thoughts weren't present. None of the negative kind of thinking processes were present at all during this experience. So I was beating myself up about that for a while. But over time, like I said, there was encoded messages. And so over time, I started to get the answers for what I had been questioning about that experience. But that's what happened that day. And I came back completely different. Like, everything about me was different. My personality, my drive, my mission in life, my purpose. I had a clear idea now of what I needed to be doing, whereas before I just, didn't know what I should be doing with my life. And it's changed my selfishness, and a sense of ego, like problematic ego, has been curbed greatly. And now I'm just all about teaching and being of service to other people, whereas before I wouldn't have cared at all about that kind of stuff in any way, shape, or form. But it's been hard because as a former research scientist, I go off facts so that I can measure, I can see, I can feel, I can have some tangible, they're tangible, right? For scientific method. This is not one of those things. So it caused, well, like prior to dying, I had a problem and like an internal battle going on. I was always interested in like the occult and like tarot and witchcraft and stuff, but it didn't jive with science at all, right? And I'd had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, like really big ones, like scary stuff. Friends have witnessed with me, and I just would not allow it to be true. Like I just would lie. I would tell myself like I made it. It's in my imagination. I'm playing tricks on myself. Like whatever I had to say to make it okay, right? Because it's not science, can't be true. This situation fixed that for me completely. Like, and the other thing too was being raised in a very traditionally conservative and religious home. I was always told that my interest in the occult and things like that were of the devil, and I'd be going to hell for that kind of stuff. And I had this guilt in me for my entire life. I died when I was 39, right? 38. So for 38 years, I'd lived with this idea that what if they're right? Like, what if that's true? Like, what if I'm going to go to hell because of this, whatever. And this experience fixed that for me as well. So I came back with no more guilt about religion stuff. And also the understanding that, yeah, science is valid, but science doesn't know everything. And there's no way I could prove what I'm saying, like what I saw, like other than prove I was dead. Can't prove what happened in that time, but I don't care because it's my reality and like that's what matters. So it killed those two big issues that I'd had in life about my belief system, if that makes sense. So yeah. And now I'm just all about furthering my knowledge about it and making a mark and leaving something positive in my when I leave, that I'll have some kind of positive contribution, you know, attributed to my experiences, I guess.